Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Massare, here with Mike Bundt to talk about the Bills' 53-man roster and a little bit of OTAs talk. Going to get into some fun position groups here today, Mike. Got a lot to talk about here on a nice Friday. Same time slot. We're back. We're back in action, 8 p.m. Fridays. Appreciate everybody tuning back in for our normal scheduled show. As always, please smash the like button here on your YouTube. Also follow us below, follow on our Facebook page. I know Mike does a good job keeping that up, as well as TikTok. You can pretty much find us out anywhere. Going to break down the 53-man roster, what we think is going to happen as we go into mandatory minicamp here, as well as training camp. It's always good to put this on record so that we can chop this up and cut it up later to see how we did as we get into September. Mike, how you doing today?
Weekend. I'm excited about having 3 days off and enjoying this start to summertime. So great time to talk Bills football, and even better time to start getting outside, enjoying the pool, having some cookouts, and enjoying that Buffalo summer weather.
There you go. Time to enjoy that Buffalo summer weather. It's supposed to be a good one here. I hope everybody has a relaxing holiday, can spend some time with friends and family. But June 1st is coming right around the corner. Used to be a day in football. Now it's not really. Now it's just kind of rolling free agency kind of as players are needed. Still can talk about a little bit, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit more of where we could see a potential vet or free agent addition. So appreciate everybody tuning in here, and we're going to start right at the top at quarterback. Probably the easiest room in the league. Honestly, it's really deep. It's what it needs to be here at this stage of what you're looking to do, and really what you're looking to progress for the Bills. You don't really have a developmental guy in the roster, Mike. I guess right off the top, do you think they roster 3 quarterbacks this year or 2?
2.
Okay.
Why
So
have a third one? You already have one of the top 3 in football, arguably maybe the best. And then your backup is one of the best backups in the league. I love Matt Barkley, but you don't need to have 3 on this roster.
There we go. I agree. I have Barkley on my practice squad. So that's pretty straightforward. I think that's why he was brought here to kind of be the third, kind of be that Davis Webb type personality, mentality. Really just be there in the locker room. Don't even have a rookie to really develop this year. So it's going to be straightforward. It's probably going to be Josh when he wants to play in the preseason. Case will get probably 2 quarters every week. And then, Matt Barkley will probably get the 4th of all the 3 preseason games, Mike. So is that kind of how you have it going?
Absolutely. And if Case Keenum works out, I wouldn't be against keeping him for a couple of years too, if you can have a manageable contract going forward in the future. So I really like the QB room. It's hard to get much better than what the Bills have right now.
And we'll see where he's at in his career. He might be a guy that's still poking around for another job to start on a team with a rookie or something. So we'll see if the Bills can keep him. But it probably is the better play than a Mitchell Trubisky, who was a pretty good signing. Didn't have to do anything last year, luckily, but then definitely was looking for his next opportunity. So I don't know if we'll see that in Keenum. So we'll see if he can continue to roll those 1-year deals, or what the Bills will just continue to find whatever the best vet is on the market at the time. So quarterback room's pretty buttoned up as we transition to running back. That's a fun position, Mike. Couple of good names there off the top. Obviously, you have Devin Singletary. Obviously, you have James Cook. You have Zack Moss. You have obviously Taiwan Jones. You have Raheem Blackshear. Whatever you want to consider Reggie Gilliam. So there were some names there. All have a path to the roster, but maybe beside Blackshear. He's one of my favorite UDFAs who could surprise some people. But really, you could see this going a few different ways, right?
Yeah, I have Reggie Gilliam listed at fullback right now. That's what the team has for their official roster. But I have Gilliam making the team once again. And then I have 4 running backs making it on the 53. Obviously, Devin Singletary, James Cook are safe. I do think that Zack Moss will make the roster. It's too early to give up on him. He was a 3rd-round pick, only entering his 3rd year in the league, was injured heading into last year. Obviously not the type of season that Bills fans or himself wanted to see, but I still think there's reasons to keep him on the roster, and then Taiwan Jones for special teams. So I would say 4 running backs if you count Reggie Gilliam as a fullback, 5 total in the backfield.
Okay, so you have, and obviously we didn't mention Duke Johnson. Do you have Duke Johnson getting cut?
Yeah, Duke Johnson is more of an insurance option. Somebody gets hurt, and you need a guy to step up. Obviously, you can call his name, but once the Bills drafted James Cook, there was really no reason to continue to have Duke Johnson on this team going forward. They're just too deep at that position right now. You're not getting rid of Singletary. You got Cook. If anything, the only way you really see Duke Johnson making the team is if they get rid of Zack Moss. And I don't really like that as an option when you invested a third-round pick in a guy just 3 drafts ago. So I don't like his odds heading into the summer.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really good way to go. I think that I don't have too much debate there for you. I think last year I had a question here about how many we rostered the same exact thing, the 4+ Gilliam, 3 active on game day. I anticipate that to be the same this year. I don't think anything's going to be different here this year for the Bills with how they're going to play that. I don't see any drastic differences. So when it comes to running back, Devin Singletary for me, I have him making the roster. Obviously James Cook, I think those 2 are locks. I don't have Zack Moss making the roster. I think that you could see him be one of the Bean trade compensation pick formula deals that we don't get those comp picks. So instead he trades some of these guys for a later round pick. So to me, I got Moss getting dealt. He is on a 2-year deal, rookie deal remaining. I don't think you can factor that as needing to keep a guy. Like, I don't think that needs to be like on the docket. I do think Brandon Bean will have some of that buyers or kind of seller's remorse there, selling Wyatt Teller a little bit too early in his career. I don't think you'll see the same type of story with Zack Moss. I think that's kind of more thing you might see with Cody Ford making the roster here. And we'll talk about O-line here shortly, but I don't have an issue with Zack Moss getting traded right now. I've seen what I needed to see from him with the rookie already. You have James Cook under contract here for the remaining of his 4-year deal. If you really want, I think you can renew Devin Singletary. He's not going to command big money, I don't believe. Obviously, you have a special teamer there in Dajuan Jones, who's probably fairly a lock outside of an injury or not, showing up and being, losing a step or whatever. It comes down to me to see if Duke Johnson can add a different dynamic to the roster. I do think it's possible. I do think they were looking for that role. Did James Cook fill it and more? I think so. But I'm really interested to see if they still want more weapons behind them that can still catch the ball out of the backfield. I still think Duke Johnson and to a lesser extent Blackshear, who could bring a little bit of extra to the table, is a really unique player in Blackshear. And I'm excited to see him in camp. Definitely have him as a priority undrafted free agent on the practice squad right now. But it isn't outlandish to see an injury or something happen to see him make the roster. I think he'll show out in training camp. I think he'll show out in the preseason. He'll be a guy people are looking forward to sitting on the practice squad and hopefully not getting plucked. He's a guy to me that will show his pass catching ability and will do some things in preseason. And you'll like, can we really afford to put him on the practice squad? So to me, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. Is I think I really liked what he was able to do, and he handpicked coming to Buffalo for a reason. That's the kind of running back they're looking for. If he beats out Duke Johnson, we'll see what can happen. But to me, I got Zack Moss getting dealt for a draft pick. Obviously, Reggie Gilliam making the team. We're pretty similar so far in our Ross prediction. Mike has Zack Moss. I have at this point, I have Duke Johnson. So pretty much no different so far.
I think a lot also too plays into does Brandon Bean think that Devin Singletary will come back next year? Will he sign a team-friendly deal? I don't expect Devin Singletary to get top-level money, so I do think it's possible the Bills could re-sign him. But if for whatever reason they don't think that he'll come back on a deal that they're trying to fit him in, I do think that could be one reason to give Zack Moss another chance, because not even just the 3rd-round draft pick. Moss does have some ability. He has some power. He showed some flashes his rookie year. Obviously, last year was a tremendous disappointment, but there was a lot of things that went into last year. And the offensive line itself was not anything to really talk up from a running perspective, even though they were decent in running stats. A lot of that was because Josh Allen had around 800 yards on the ground. I do think it's possible for Zack Moss to take a step forward. I'm not expecting him to be a 1,000-yard back, but if he was given the opportunities, there's no reason to think he couldn't average over 4 yards a carry and be a 300, 400-yard guy on the ground. Not saying he will be, but given the opportunity, I think he could be.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting. I think there is a lot of different ways you can go with this, and I don't think this room's settled. I think you could see some weird things happening here, whether it's a vet, whether it's some type of trade, like we mentioned, Zack Moss. I tend to agree that he can be traded, and they did have a vision for signing and wanting to have Duke Johnson on the roster. Obviously, the way it went down in the draft and being able to draft James Cook could have changed that plan. But I do think you would like to have that pass catching back who can do a little bit more. He played pretty well at the end of the year. I was kind of the camp that what said he wasn't as good as McKissick at what the Bills were looking for. Beside a couple of games in the last couple of years, he hasn't been really anything special. Very similar to a guy you're taking a flyer on. But I do think that he'll play a role in this. I don't think it's just an automatic cut him, cut Blackshear. I do think there is a little bit of play on this final position, especially if the Bills think that they can get a little bit out of Zack Moss in the trade market. That might be the differentiator to roster one of those pass catching backs. And maybe a younger blooded player like Blackshear can make the roster. He's a guy that I really like, and we want to break down some more film for him and bring him to you. And as we watch him more throughout the spring and into the summer. So watch out for Blackshear. Has been one of probably at this stage, one of the only UDFAs I'm watching, and maybe one on the offensive line. But let's get into tight end now, Mike. You could go a couple different ways here, tight end as well. So that's why I wanted to go right to tight end. You could say, do they really need more than the two, in their two starters in Dawson Knox and OJ Howard? Do they really need to do more than that? That's the question. Does Tommy Sweeney need a roster spot? Do you do something with Quentin Morris, Jalen Watermeyer, a guy that's been talked about here as a UDFA? Not to keep bringing those up, but those are probably, for me, the two more prominent UDFAs here on the roster, as I won't really have much to say about UDFAs on the defensive side at this stage. But what's your feeling on the tight end room? And obviously we have the two locks. Same thing with quarterback. Are you putting a third on the roster?
Right now I am. Right now I have three tight ends. I have Dawson Knox, OJ Howard, and I went with Tommy Sweeney with the third option. This is not one that I want to lock in by any means. I do not feel that strongly about this. When I was going through the roster earlier today, I had like 45 guys or so where I'm like, okay, they're going to make the team. And then when it was getting down to the final 3, 4, 5 spots, I was debating, do you find a spot for a third tight end? I think Tommy Sweeney has a chance based on it being his third year with the organization. That probably gets him a slight advantage over some of the UDFAs. Wademeyer out of Texas A&M, I mean, he might have a chance, but I like his odds of starting out more on the practice squad if he shows anything during camp. So I'm going to give Sweeney a slight edge on making it as a third tight end, but I could really see the Bills going with two going into the season. When it came to number crunching, I found one final spot for Sweeney.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't. So I'm going lean at the tight end room. I do think that you can stash a combination of Wademeyer and all three of them, maybe Quentin Morris, as well as Tommy Sweeney. I don't believe any would get claimed. I don't believe you have to worry about him. You could probably even put 2 of the 3 on your practice squad and have them ready on game days. With the practice squad rules still in effect, the 2 elevations on game day, I don't think you need to roster a tight end 3 at this stage, unless it's someone that brings something different, a veteran. I think they're going to need to dip into that roster spot. For me personally, at this stage, until I'm proven otherwise, that one of those guys does something that the roster needs. We're still remains to be seen with what Cromer wants to do with blocking and tight ends, what we want to do with in terms of their running game with tight ends, maybe some more pass catching options. And as we see here, maybe a veteran on the market here, Kyle Rudolph does ring a bell. So I don't have the tight end 3 on the roster, so I'm not going to give the spot to it yet. I don't think Tommy Sweeney needs to be anywhere other than the practice squad. And those roster spots right now in the 53-man roster are as valuable as dollars for the Bills.
Practice squad
buy more.
Yeah. I do think it's important to have a third guy that do have some confidence in. And the main reason being, Dawson Knox and OJ Howard, they have some injury past. So it's not like either of these guys are – I mean, they both have had serious injuries in the past that they've missed time. So you do need to have a third option in case you're going to plan on running 2 tight end sets more often this year. Maybe it wasn't an issue in the past, but some things are going to change with the offense this season, and you're going to need a little bit more depth if you're going to change things up.
Yeah, and I like the chatter of potentially adding a different tight end 3 to the roster. I think that could be a position where, Brandon Beane mentioned in some of his press conferences and when he's on air, different. I like to listen to all types of, whether he's talking to Mike Florio or anybody else in his kind of off Bills interviews. He's a lot more telling than Sean McDermott is in a lot of ways. And I'll listen to Brandon Beane every day of the week. Sean McDermott will say the same stuff. It's kind of funny. It doesn't really bother me. But I think that's what he should say as a coach. But Brandon Beane will give you some news and nuggets occasionally. So for me, I really like the ability to add to the tight end 3 room. He gave us a little nugget that he liked the tight ends in this draft, and potentially with his 4th round pick, had he had it, he says it could have been Shakir there, but then also mentioned specifically liking the tight ends. So to me, it shows me that there was some ability to add to the tight end 3 room, as well as 2 tight ends who aren't going to, we talk about who's not going to be on the roster next year when it comes to running back, but who's not going to be on the roster next year when it comes to tight ends? Nobody. So to me, I think that you have the ability to make a move at the tight end position. I wouldn't call that crazy to me. So I like the ability to add to that room. I don't think I think it happens. I think there's a possibility that Bills add to the tight end room. So, Mike, you agree, or are you full bore Tommy Sweeney?
Hey, I'm open to anything that improves the football team. So if they find a 3 tight end that they want to add, I'm all for it. But right now, I don't think it's a pressing need. If they go about it, no worries either way. But I'm okay with Tommy Sweeney or one of those other guys as the 3rd tight end if they find it important enough to do something.
Yeah, of course. So, we'll see. We'll see what Dorsey puts into play here. Will it be the same system that we saw under Dable? No, there's going to be some changes and some different nuances and intricacies there for him, as well as Cromer's new addition. So I do think you'll see some more out of the tight end room, hence the OJ Howard. I directly always say the JD McKissick money went into OJ Howard. I think they just literally almost the same contract in a way. So I think that, at least on the books this year. So I think that after that news broke, they were like, yeah, let's have upgrade tight end 2. Let's see who will come. And I do believe the interest in Evan Ingram and others as well throughout, not just this year and past years. So I think that that'll open up the versatility of the roster and what OJ Howard can do on the field and a lot of different, personnels, whether it's 22, 12, you can run all types of different stuff now. You can still go to your 11. You can still do a lot of different things on the field. And they were limited last year. I'm going to be honest with what they could do in the tight end room. So kind of pushing us to the receiver room. And the fun room. Wanted to get all those out of the way, kind of get tight end talked about. Why I needed to create a roster spot, Mike, might be here for this room right now, right here. So I'm going to bounce it to you. Give me your thoughts on the wide receiver room and how many you're keeping.
I'm keeping 6, and I feel pretty confident that these 6 will be the guys that they'll go with. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, 1, 2, Jamison Crowder, 3. Love Khalil Shakir. We've been talking about him all off season since the Bills took him in the draft. 4, Isaiah McKenzie 5, and then Jay Kumar 6. I'm confident that those are going to be the 6 guys. Marquez Stevenson, unfortunately, he didn't really stand out with his opportunity last year. Had a nice punt return in the preseason for a touchdown, but in the regular season, when you're a punt returner, when you're a kick returner, and that's your primary role, and you're playing in Buffalo, the number one thing is ball security. I don't care about the ability to always get 10 yards per punt return. I need a guy back there that's going to be able to handle the swirling winds, keep the ball safe, and not put it on the ground, especially when you have a guy like Josh Allen at quarterback where you feel like the offense can get whatever yards that they need. Just secure the ball. And with Khalil Shakir now being on this roster, a guy that can bring that added versatility and possibly be a return man if needed, you already have the safety net with Micah Hyde. You don't want to use it, but you know that he can bring a punt return ability when needed. I don't know how Marquez Stevenson makes this team without really bringing a huge improvement from the actual wide receiver perspective. So those are my 6. Kumar makes it for special teams purposes, but I love that top 5. Gabe Davis is going to have a big step up this year. Jamison Crowder, very experienced, is going to add some value in the slot. And Khalil Shakir, I think being in that 4 spot, splitting some time with Isaiah McKenzie, great development piece going forward. So I would take 6. I don't think there's a reason to keep Isaiah Hodgins or keep Marquez Stevenson as a 7th wide receiver. I don't think at that point it's necessary.
Yeah, So for me, I'm glad you brought up those 6. So we agree for once. I guess we agree on quarterback. We agree here at the receiver room. Those are my 6. I was on Buffalo late night, I think, with Greg, as well as a couple other people that were on the show, and we were kind of, just kind of paneling off the 53-man roster, and we were leaving out a little bit of Kumaro, and I'm like, well, I think he's a lock. Like outside of maybe coming to camp, like this is like preface for most players outside of coming to camp and not really doing much. I think that like Jake Kumar is a pivotal member on a lot of special teams units, as well as does have some red zone ability, can play the receiver position, and do a little bit of everything at a vet minimum, more or less. So for me, I think that he's a really good player to have on the roster, and that's what you're looking for in your 6th spot for your receiver room. Though I could clear up a 7th, but only one way I clear up my 7th. You probably need to cut from the tight end room and put those into the onto the practice squad, like Tommy Sweeney's, Quentin Morris's, or Jalen Watermeyer's of the world. Maybe one of those 3 tight ends just eliminates this altogether. But the 7th receiver room could come with a special teamer, right? And not going to be gunner, probably not going to play on majority of units. But what could they do, Mike? The return room. Could somebody come and steal the show in the return room? Could Stevenson return his way onto the 7th man? Realistically, with Kumar playing teams, Stevenson playing a little bit of returner, it's a little bit different than just 7 traditional receivers. So I think that you can play your way onto the roster. And can somebody play their way onto the roster? Also, not shocking to see a move at this receiver room, not because I think that there needs to be a top 3 receiver added, but because I think they could add a returner if they need to on free agency or trade. So I do think the 7th spot, just like I was kind of talking about with tight end, I don't know that I see the tight end 3 on the roster today. I do think that there's some players that can make a play for receiver 7 or an acquisition at that position as well. You just need a solid returner. Isaiah McKenzie's going to have a role on this offense. We all talk about Khalil Shakir. Can he win the returner job? If he does, he saves a roster spot for another position. Maybe then you can add another tight end to the roster. But for me, I think somebody like Stevenson gets poached. I really do. He might be one of the only cuts I have on my roster outside something crazy getting claimed. So that has played a little bit of a role in the past. So you could see a trade come out of this unit as well. I do think you see a trade either at the running back 3 spot in Zack Moss or here at the depth of receiver. So for me, I got Kumaro as a lock to me as on the roster out bearing an injury. I don't think they need to move away from him. I think that he does a lot of stuff well in the room and is an active game day spot, Mike. So going into the O-line room, a fun room, this is one that we could have a couple of different combos at. So obviously the starters are Deion Dawkins, Roger Saffold, Mitch Morse, Ryan Bates, Spencer Brown. Don't see any movement there. That is right now with no real additions made in free agency or the draft. That's your starting 5 here for the Buffalo Bills. Add in David Quisenberry, a guy they can use as the 6th offensive lineman in road grading situations and different things, handpicked by Aaron Kromer here to be here as the 6th offensive lineman. Bearing a horrible, drop-dead, terrible camp, he's your 6th and probably 1st offensive lineman off the bench. As you continue down, Ike Butker coming off of a Achilles injury, a player that will start on PUP, and I do believe does have plans. The Bills wouldn't have signed him knowing that he won't be back till week 5. Now that PUP is on 4 weeks, I do think you might see Ike Butker around week 5, 6, or 7, or somewhat to add that guard depth as they push toward there's an injury. You could see him come in, be active, and start. That's kind of what I believe they think of Ike Butker, a really good depth piece on the roster, but won't really need to count in your roster numbers, at least for this example, Mike. So we're going to put him on PUP for now, but is going to factor into the roster here after his time on the physically unable to perform list, which is now only 4 weeks per the CBA. Greg Manns, Cody Ford, Tommy Doyle, Luke Tenuta, Jacob Cabra, Bobby Hart, Alec Anderson, Tanner Owen, Will Ulmer, and Derek Kerstetter, a couple of guys that had some play in the draft. What do you got for me beyond the 5 starters?
So I included Ike Butker in this one. So my numbers are going to be a little bit different than yours, but 4 tackles, 4 guards, and then the 2 centers, obviously Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Roger Saffold, Ryan Bates, and Mitch Morse. That's easy. They all start. David Quisenberry, that's an obvious one. The Bills brought him in. He's going to provide an upgrade run blocking whenever he's in the game. Tommy Doyle, I think Cody Ford finds a way to make the team. I'm not confident in Cody Ford. He really hasn't given us much reason to be confident in him in recent years,
Sure.
but I still think he's going to stick around a little bit longer. Ike Butker and then Greg Manns, I have backing up Mitch Morse. So those would be
Okay.
my 10 when the team is fully healthy. Obviously, if Ike Butker starts on PUP, there might be someone else that can squeak their way out. So all those other names that you mentioned might be battling out for a final lineman spot. But I like the starting unit, and I think that they've improved some of the depth behind them. So hopefully this is one of the more improved units on the Bills going into this season.
Yeah, it definitely is. And for me, I think that there's not a lot to. I think there's some good depth on the roster. What do they do at backup center? Does Greg Manns need a spot, or do they see somebody else eligible to kind of kick inside and take the center role? Ryan Bates. What are they going to do at that center? Like Butker, maybe if he returns, what are they going to do at that center spot? Or do they feel like they need to roster Greg Manns onto the roster? That's kind of a big question mark for me. They do like their UDFA offensive linemen. Will they like Butker? They like Ryan Bates. Will they roster one? I don't think it's crazy. I don't. This is another room where I do think that you could see the ninth offensive, especially like Ike Butker is away on PUP. Is an Achilles injury. I don't think they would have signed him if he actually tweeted himself. He's progressing well. I don't think they need to make a move to roster him if they didn't see need him in the rooms and have him be ready fairly soon into the season. Or I don't think you're stashing him for week 18. I just don't. I just don't really think that there would have been a reason to do that here. So I do think he's ready earlier than that and adds a role into the roster. But my 5 are the starting 5, as we've already talked about. Quisenberry is going to make the roster. I got Tommy Doyle making the roster there to kind of round out the tackle room. So that's my 7 pretty easily. Ike Butker to PUP. But I do have Greg Manns making it definitely off the bat until I see some movement here or need. He's my 8th, but I'm only keeping 9. And I do have the Bills holding on to Cody Ford right now at this stage. So my 3 most likely trade candidates right now could be Marquez Stevenson getting traded. It could be Zack Moss getting traded, and it could be Cody Ford still getting traded. Those are my 3 likely trade candidates on the roster, but I do have him making the roster right now. And until something else happens, but I do think like an Alec Anderson or a Derek Kerstetter could really play their way on. Might be a little bit tougher depending on what position they're going to play. We saw Tommy Doyle kick inside to guard. I know that's something they do anyways. I watched a little bit of coverage on that in Aaron Cromer's system. So we'll see if that matters. But to me, I think there's some interesting ways they could do that. And then obviously you have Luke Tenuta, a guy that should be, kind of destined for the practice squad, Mike. So those are the 9 I have. I think it's conceivable that they did spend some money on Alec Anderson. I think it's conceivable that one of those UDFAs could play on the roster at one of these position groups, whether it's running back or offensive line. I do think, or I guess Weidemeyer has a chance too at one of these offensive positions. Funny enough, that might be where I have a UDFA making the roster over anywhere else on the team. So that's kind of a roundabout offense. What do you think of that offense here as we approach June 1st?
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. There's not many areas where when you look at most of the offense, there's not many tough spots where you're like, oh, this guy or that guy. You could go a couple different directions at a few different positions, but it's not anything that I would say at this point in time will be a notable difference going that way. You look at quarterback room, that's set. Running back, you're talking about who's the third running back. Wide receiver, it's are you going to keep a 7th man tight end? Are you going to keep a third tight end? And then you're looking at depth for the O-line. So it's really something nice that the Bills feel decent about their main guys in all these positions. And really what we're arguing is over maybe somebody that's not even going to play that often in most of these positions. So I feel pretty strong about how this offense looks heading into the summer.
Yeah, as always, please hit the like button here. It helps us bring great content. Appreciate you, Charity. Thank you so much. It is time, though, as we transition to defense here, that I did promise the signed football update of who is on the signed football. This is Jim Kelly right here. So we're going to take Jim right out of the equation. Give me who's on this signed football. This was actually from training camp. I'm not going to give you the year. Give me who's on this signed football. There's a bunch of names on here. I'm interested to see if you guys can predict it, but give me some names. If someone can name a couple of them, maybe I will end up sending this football to somebody. I don't know.
Damn,
I've
you
gotten
told
crazy
me this
before.
a week and a half ago. I don't even remember.
So send them away. Like if someone nails a couple of them, I may do send this football away to somebody. So appreciate you guys tuning in. But I will at the end of the show though release who these names are, Mike. So
Okay. You
let's
should give them a
see.
clue.
Let's
Like,
see.
what decade are we talking about? Is that too much?
I don't want to give the decade. I'm gonna say it's not
Is it a drought
overly
team?
prominent. Yeah, it's drought era. So it's
Okay.
in between Josh Allen and Jim Kelly. So I'm gonna give that clue. So in between the two quarterbacks, and not prominent like Bruce Smith. So a little bit later than those. I'll give you guys that clue. So we're gonna go from there. So guys, keep sending us in who you think this is, and maybe I'll send it to somebody.
I
But
do
there's
want to
some.
give one. Can I give one clue? Isn't one of them one of the favorite players of Bill's Mafia during the drought? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, potentially is on the list
Okay.
of favorite
That,
players.
that
I
could be
think
a
I think
couple
so.
different. That could be a couple different guys. So that's not giving it away 100%. So
Okay, I've seen a right guess or two, so we'll see what comes in as names come in here. We're gonna go to the defense first, as I can kind of check on the names, but um, what we got going on in the defense, we're gonna start on the D line, Mike. We're gonna lump. We'll do D line all together. There's no reason to break up tackles and ends. I don't really think there's really a reason to do that. Got Rousseau at Oliver, Daquan Jones, Von Miller, and Tim Settle and Boogie Basham on the roster. Jordan Phillips, AJ Epinesa, and Shaq Lawson. Is this a fairly locked room?
yeah, I think this room is pretty set. I mean, unless the Bills want to make a surprise move and get rid of Epineza or something like that, but I don't see that really happening. Shaq Lawson, Jordan Phillips, I guess they could have been guys that were movable if they don't show up in camp, but I think you're pretty set with Rousseau, Epineza, Basham, Lawson, and then Phillips, Settle, Oliver, Jones, and if you want to count Von Miller as the edge, whatever you want to put him as his position, put him in that group as well. Those are the guys that I feel pretty safe about right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a room I have those 9. I have no debate for it. I don't really see any real movement here. An injury could change it, but that could change anything. There's pointless to talk about injuries. But that's the 9 I got. I don't have any ounce of movement there. I have a guy like Eli Anku potentially being able to make a play. We already know they're going to practice squad Mike Love. I think he's just their practice squad defensive end. That's just what it is at this point. And then do they like one of those UDFAs to throw in the practice squad, like CJ Brewer or Prince Emily, or et cetera, Kingsley Jonathan. But they're going to probably roster practice squad Brandon Bryant and Mike Love. And then Eli Inku potentially if something happens at defensive tackle, like an injury. But that's it. I think it's a pretty easy unit, right?
Yeah, and I love the unit too.
Yep.
A lot of people have been critical of the Bills' defensive line in the past year or so, and there really is no one on that line that's been elite in recent years. Obviously, Von Miller, you expect him to be elite with the Bills, and he's been a great player wherever he's been. But you look at the guys like Greg Rousseau, AJ Epineza, Boogie Basham. You're really hoping that one of them can really step up their game to a higher level this season. Obviously, Rousseau was great against the run last year, but you're hoping that some of these guys can transfer their get some sacks, get some QB hits going forward because the Bills have been decent at getting to the quarterback, but I'm hoping there's another level. They've been good in the adjusted pass rush rates and getting around the quarterback, and even their sack totals are above average in the league. But it feels like there's something missing, and Von Miller hopefully will unleash that untapped potential for this team going forward.
And as we get into linebacker, I agree with Mike. I think it's the easiest room there for me, maybe beside quarterback. I do think that was a 9 happen, bearing an injury, and Eli Anku making a play. That's straight up the 9 to me. We did get one right so far. It is Brian Moorman. So Brian Moorman is on the football, but there's some great names here, and I haven't really seen them yet. So continue to think about it, but think about Brian Moorman a little bit, and think about who could be there with him. I mean, some good guesses, some close guesses, but I think about who would be there with Brian Moorman throughout his era. I'm gonna give one. Do I want to give one away? Should I give one away, Mike?
Give one away.
Who should I give away? Who should I get? What won't they get? I'll give you what you won't get. How about this? This one. I'm going to give this one away, and this is the only one I'm going to give away. We got a Jabron Hamden.
Oh, my.
Jabron Hamden. If you had Jabron Hamden, I would have sent this to you. I did not see any Jabron Hamdens in the chat, but I got a Jabron Hamden mixed with Brian Moorman so far on this ball. So Brian Moorman, Jabron Hamden, and I got some other gems on here that are very cool. All right, Mike, linebacker room. We got – what do you got?
No, you go. You go ahead. Give me some cheat codes. I want to see what you're saying first.
All right. So we got Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, locked. Terrell Bernard, a locked. Tyler Matakevich, a lock for the special teams unit. Those 4. I do think that they roster 6. I have 6 jotted down here. There's a pretty big battle. I mean, this is where I have a rookie making the roster. I have Balen Spector at making the roster. I do believe that he can do a little bit of everything. I do believe he can actually play the linebacker position, as he's done at a high level at Clemson, as well as teams. As long as he can play teams, we are making the roster. I got 6 linebackers here making the roster, especially if we're not going to roster a 7th receiver. And in my case, not as 3rd tight end at this stage. I do have the 6 linebackers making the roster, especially with a lot of them focusing on special teams. So that's my initial 5. And then the biggest battle right now we have is Terrell Dodson versus Andre Smith. I think that's a fun battle. I think that Terrell Dodson can bring a little bit more from the potential of playing linebacker. And then I think that Smith's a little bit better of a special teamer and whatever. What do you got, Mike? So I am going to give the nod right now to Terrell Dodson making the roster with Balen Spector, but barely. And Andre Smith's right there watching for an injury. And probably there could be some one of those 3 definitely going on the special teams. And I do think they put Joe Giles Harris on the practice squad as well.
Yeah, so this is where some of my offensive decisions have probably impacted my defensive room right now. I have 5 linebackers, obviously Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds.
Yep.
I mean, you can't cut them. Terrell Bernard, Tyler Matakevich, and then I have Tyrell Dodson rounding it up. I do think Balen Spector could have a chance.
What do you got?
Obviously, 7th round pick. Has nice. The Raz was impressive from what we've gone through, but it's hard for me to roster a 7th round pick with a roster that's already this deep. So I look at him as more of a practice squad addition at this time. But the other 5 outside of Dodson, I feel pretty good about. Dodson, as you said, that could be one where he's battling for a spot come camp and come late August, because the other 4 you feel good about. Dodson, he has a battle to make this team.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate that, Mike. And it's going to be a good bet. I think that there's some things to like there. All right, let's see. Did we have any good guesses here on who it could have been? We're getting closer. Definitely getting closer. Jabron Hamden, we got Brian Moorman on the ball. I got to give away. There's one on here you'll never get, so I got to drop it too. I should have actually dropped this over Hamden, to be honest. But in this same room with Jabron Hamden was Matt Barker, a waiver wire claimed quarterback from Miami. Matt Barker, right there. Matt Barker. I'm giving you some cheat codes too. You could kind of see who might else be on here. But Matt Barker, quarterback, was also on the ball. So if anyone remembers Matt Barker, let's hear about it. If anyone can remember some plays from the Matt Barker era. All right. DB, we'll start at the cornerback position and then get into safety. So we will split these ones up, Mike. I'm going to bounce it to you to start, though. Let me hear you talk. Let me see your thoughts on this on the corner room.
So hopefully I did all my math right too, because otherwise this is going to be embarrassing at the end. I don't know if you
did your math right.
Who knows? I was good at math until high school when they started putting letters in it. So I have 6 corners right now. I'm assuming that Trey White will be available for the start of the season. Obviously, that's still up in the air. Who knows how that's going to play out? I don't think he's going to miss 4 or 5 games. I think he'll be back by at least the second or third game of the season. Just speculating. Really have nothing to go off of. But then Kyer Elam as the number 2, Dane Jackson 3, Taron Johnson, obviously very strong at what he does, Tyron Neal, and then Cam Lewis. So those would be my 6. I think Cam Lewis has a shot to make this team. Obviously not close to a lock, but I think he played well in his limited opportunities with the Bills in the past. And I think the Bills have developed him for a reason. They like what they've seen from him, and hopefully the UB product gets a chance to contribute on this team as a regular going forward.
So that's 6 total, right? Making the roster?
Yep, 6 total, 6? Yep.
So you have Cam on the roster. So you have Elam, you have Trey White, you have Dane Jackson, you have Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, and
Sarah Neal. Yep.
And Sarah Neal. Yeah, okay. So the 6 there from Mike. I like it. I like that 6, Mike. I specifically think that right now that is a likely 6 to make the roster. That is probably the betting odds. And then if you have Trey White going on the PUP list, I think it's possible you see somebody like Nick Mcleod. He had a really good spring so far. He's been talked about. Cincinnati claimed him right away from our initial roster cuts. The Bills took him back after he was cut, similar to Ike Butker. So Nick McLeod's the real wild card, and we've heard some good things. I need to see this Nick McLeod continue to make a roster spot. Priority practice squad member, which we don't know that we could get him through to, but Nick McLeod's going to make a play for this cornerback room as probably the final member. But hey, Cam Lewis really has played well at times. Could somebody like Tim Harris or Jamarcus Ingram from UB or UDFA Trevon Fuller? It's a room the Bills could get interesting at. So, but yeah, I have those same 6 as Mike actually making the roster in this case, with Nick McLeod like right on the cusp with Nick McLeod. So that's a fairly agreeable unit. Getting to safety here. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, DeMar Hamlin, Jaquan Johnson. I don't have Josh Thomas making him as a prior. I have him as a prior. They love him. I have him as a priority practice squad member. Right? Like there's nothing really to go off of here, right?
Yeah, safety's pretty simple. I have the same 4: Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Jaquan Johnson, DeMar Hamlin. To me, it's pretty set in stone, those 4. The entire defense really felt pretty safe with a lot of positions. I guess with cornerback, you could try to figure out who's going to be that 6th guy, and you could go at linebacker and ask about a few guys. But for the most part, this defense is pretty cut and dry with who the impact players are and who should be making it.
Yeah, I agree. Wouldn't be shocked to see a move at safety. We haven't really talked about any moves on the defensive side of the ball yet, but I don't know. I could see them doing something at safety if they needed to. Maybe something at corner. That corner could still be a thing if there's an injury. Will they go with Nick McLeod, Cam Lewis if Trey can't go, or will they go with the Joe Hayden or another named, Steven Nelson, another named corner? I think it's possible that they could go with a vet corner still. I think that's likely to add to the roster. Special teams, obviously Tyler Bass, Reed Ferguson are locks. The Matt Ariza battle. Is that an easy one?
I think it's an easy one. I don't think you draft a punter in the 6th round unless you really think he's going to be your punter. Okay. So, Matt Hack, he's an okay NFL punter. He's good at getting the ball down in the 20s, but there was times last year he was a detriment to the Bills. That opener against Pittsburgh, whether you want to blame the blocking, you want to blame him, it was on both of them. And then the Jets game with the winds just struggled punting into the wind. And I get it. It's tough, but it helps to have one of the strongest leg kickers in football to be your punter when you're punting and swirling winds in Buffalo in December and January. And hopefully Matt Ariza is up to the challenge, because we saw what he can do in the Mountain West Conference. Let's see what he can do in Buffalo.
Agreed. That's the 3 I have. Ariza, Matt Hawk absolutely lost him the game. He took an extra step as a former punter. He took an extra step on that. No doubt about it. The ball was wet. He needed to spin it still. Would have rather him gotten off a 40-yard punt, which is all he gets off anyways, than try to make a perfect punt there in that position. Absolutely not good punter. I can't, though, if Arise is having problems holding the football, could make it interesting. I'm not going to say he is going to have problems with that, but if he does, Bills kick a whole lot in terms of extra points, and others, they get into scoring position a lot. So it's a small factor that will be factored, but ultimately I think Matt Ariza will get that handled and be on the roster here as well. So that's the three that I have.
One quick thing too about the defense.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just thought about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's not discount Christian Benford too. 6th-round pick, cornerback, maybe a safety in the future out of Villanova. I don't know if he'll make the roster, but I think this is a guy that they're definitely high on and think he could develop into something down the line. So I don't want to give up on him because Brandon Beane has been pretty good with these late round secondary selections in the past. So don't want to just completely discount him.
That's fair. Good point. We were talking about Nick Mcleod, rightfully so, but we did not really talk about Christian Benford much. So do think he could have the potential. Definitely.
Did we lose Kevin? Let's see. Sorry, guys. It looks like we might have just lost Kevin. I'm going to try to get him back up here in just a second. First time that this happened with us on the show, so just give me a few minutes here. Sorry about this. There you are, man.
Not sure. StreamYards, I know, have been having some issues, so I'm back. And with that, that is our 53-man roster, though. But Mike, what do you got?
Dude, I'm so happy you're back because my face, I don't know if everybody can tell watching this link right now. I look like an apple. My face, it's sad. I was on TV.
Mike, you could gladly talk about OTAs for us, Mike.
So some of you guys know I was a sports anchor for 3.5 years. So I should be used to technical issues and things going wrong. But normally when that happens on television, you just cut to a commercial until they figure it out. And then you're back on air. During a podcast, I froze, Kev. You're the one that produces every show that comes up with the topics. So thank God you're back.
Spin, if you get one more right, the football is going to make its way to you. Robert Royal is on the football. So good guess with Robert Royal. Spin, you're one guess away from maybe getting the football. So we got Brian Mormon, we got Jabron Hampton, we got Matt Barker, and Robert Royal. So there you go. Spin, I'll give you one guess to get the football. So we'll go from there. Mike, OTAs. Some stuff we talked about Mcleod a little bit, and that's kind of the biggest thing I heard coming out of it. Elam was one-on-one with Stephon Diggs. Did you have any special news or nuggets that you wanted to address after practice last week?
I feel like the biggest one I've been hearing this week is Nick Mcleod. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like he's had a great start to spring practice, and that's good to hear. And maybe that'll help his stock heading into training camp, and maybe he can squeak his way onto the team as one of the final players. I'm hesitant to go all the way in on that. With a team like the Bills, any team really in the NFL, I take everything in OTAs with a grain of salt. This is the hype season where bandwagons are created and media needs stories to report. So I'm not really going to hype up anything from the Bills. I think everything is status quo going into it. What you felt, I feel the same way now as I did a couple weeks ago. We'll see what changes once training camp starts. That's when I start taking things a little bit more seriously. And I know some of our Cover One buddies feel the same way. Aaron Quinn, very similar in that take. But I will say a couple OTA stories across the league that have been catching my eye. The Tua Tagovailoa talk in Miami is just getting absolutely ridiculous. Everybody's trying to hype him up like, oh, he's ready to take that huge third-year leap. You're hearing stories about Zach Wilson in New York getting thicker and getting asked by reporters, hey, your teammates say you look like Mike Vick. It's like, are you kidding me? Like Mike Vick, who was a generational athlete at the time he came into the NFL. Like, not saying Zach Wilson isn't extremely athletic, but come on, like let's try to keep things in perspective. And then you have some of the talk that, oh, maybe the Raiders now are actually going to be special, and just all these storylines all around the league where you're just like, come on, I understand you need things to report, and this is the season where you try to talk about players really worked hard this offseason. They've been toning up, getting into game shape, and trying to refine themselves. Well, duh, that's what you do in the offseason. Like, you try to improve on the things that you weren't that great at the year before. You're trying to stay in the league. So really just the Tua stories and the Zach Wilson stories. And then how can we forget about the Patriots talk right now? Who's the offensive coordinator? Who's calling the plays? Who knows? Because Bill Belichick isn't saying anything. So, but then there's talk from some of the Patriots reporters. Well, they got more depth at wide receiver than they've had in the last 2 or 3 years. Well, duh, they sucked at wide receiver the last 2 or 3 years. It's hard not to have more depth when you were horrible at a position for 3 years. So I love this time of the year because you can tell which places are putting out this crap just because they need to fill content compared to what is actually legitimate, which is literally next to none. This is like spring football practice for colleges. You go in, you do your thing, you hope to impress, but really you're just trying not to screw up and not to get hurt, not mess up and embarrass yourself that could get you dropped on the depth chart. But that's just my take on it. I know we in a couple weeks, one of the topics will be which offseason stories are being overhyped and which aren't getting talked about enough, but we'll save that for a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, and you guys are all over guessing it, but you're there, but you're not there. I like the Keith Allison guess. Close.
You need to give one more clue. One more clue.
I mean, I think the clues are there. Like we're getting closer to the era. We're getting even closer to the years-ish. I've seen some good guesses from like Duke Preston to some Keith Allison's a good name guess. John DiGiorgio. Who remembers John DiGiorgio? That'd be a good guess. John DiGiorgio had like 100 tackles for Dick Duran. Come on. There's some good guesses on here right now. But one prominent, did we trade for him? Prominent name defensive player is on here. We traded for him. Probably paid him for that, especially for those Ralph Wilson era Bills.
You said we traded for this guy?
It says traded, yeah. So per the official roster, we traded for him. So we're close.
Offense or defense?
Defense. So we'll leave it there. We'll leave it
there.
there.
Lawyer Malloy because he was cut. Takeo was free agency.
Yeah. If I give it away, that's no more football out the door. Then
was free agency, I believe.
I like the Co Simpson guess. I gotta say, I see Co Simpson, Sean Merriman. Not a bad guess. That's a bad guess. Sam Adams was Sammy right after Sam Adams. Some good guesses, but we haven't nailed it. Also, the tight end room is on here as well. The bad tight end room.
Can I guess? Can I guess one? You said tight end.
Yeah, go ahead. Robert Royal, we already know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, that was going to be my guess. I didn't realize that was already given.
Yeah.
Tight end during the drought.
Bad. I mean, these rooms were terrible. There were some terrible.
These rosters were real. We're not talking like Scott Chandler, are we?
No. Right before.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I got that.
This is bad.
I got the official tight end room of this year, actually. For one of the Robert Royal. He was actually on the roster a little bit, but for one of the Robert Royal years. So was these are some bad teams. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, these are some bad teams.
What was it? One of the 7-9 teams, or was it the 6-10 teams? I used to love joking around about that because the Bills would always go on streaks. Like they had 3 straight years of 7-9. Then they had 6-10, 3 out of 4 years, or was that 3 years in a row? The Bills, it was always they couldn't be bad enough to get the high draft pick. They were always just mediocre enough to like give you hope going into the next season, but also drain it all within a couple weeks of the start of the year. Oh, yeah. Tight end. I'm thinking like early 2000s Bills tight ends now, but the names are eluding me. I can picture everyone in my head, but I can't. Some of the names are just I just can't name.
We got number 86, Derek Fine. Who had Derek Fine on the roster?
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, Derek Fine.
I like the Marcus Stroud guess right there. But
Marcus Stroud is the 99 guess. After a multitude of clues, we got probably the only like actual prominent player we traded for was Marcus Stroud.
I was so pumped when the Bills got Marcus Stroud.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. Like I was at that point, I was still in high school.
Really do anything? Did Marcus Stroud move the needle here in Buffalo? Did Marcus Stroud do anything?
He didn't do what people thought or were hoping he would do. So when he was in Jacksonville, he was a good player. And I remember I was I don't know, I was probably a junior or senior in high school when Marcus Stroud was acquired by the Bills. And that's back when you didn't have people tweeting. You didn't really, social media was just in its infancy. And I had ESPN Insider, and that's where like they would have the rumors. They would talk about which players could be on the move. And I told a couple people at school, I'm like, ESPN Insider saying Marcus Stroud might go to the Bills. And like my buddies were saying, Mike, you're crazy. You have no clue what you're talking about. You're just throwing crap against the wall. And like next thing you know, Marcus Stroud was acquired by the Bills. They got off to a nice start the next year. I believe the first game with Stroud, that might have been the Seattle home opener when, what was it, Mormon threw a touchdown to Chris Kelsey. And I was like, God, we're going to be great. And it didn't turn out that way. But just one of those names that gets forgotten over the years.
Didn't really do much and then ended his career at 32. 3 years in Buffalo, only 7.5 sacks total in his 3 years. Played okay at times, but didn't miss games. So it's tough to say, only missed 2 games in Buffalo in those 3 seasons. But from 2008 to 2010 is what happened there. The official names on the ball, though, we got Robert Royal, Matt Barker, Derek Fine, Robert Royal, Jabron Hamden, Trent Edwards, Brian Moorman, and Marcus Stroud, making it the 2008 football. So the 2008, August 31st, 2008.
So
roughly was when this ball.
That was the 7-9 year where they started 5-1, correct? That was
yes.
That was the 4-0. Then they lost to Arizona. Edwards gets the concussion. They come back. They beat the Chargers at home 5-1, and then they lose 8 of their next 10. Am I remembering that right? I think one of the last wins might have been a Denver late in the season type contest against Jay Cutler. I might be misremembering, but damn, those years. So many
depressing years. Perry Fuel, Turk Schoner. That is a memory. I have that ball there to remind, not because it's worth anything. There's some funny names.
I was gonna say, like, how much do you think that football is worth? Like $10, $15?
$10.
You know what football I would love? I would love a Buffalo Bills football signed by Vince Young, Reggie Bush, and Mario Williams.
Yeah, that'd be a good ball. Yeah, and then this is Jimbo. So we got Jimbo here. So that's my ball my helmet that's actually worth something. But also what's funny about that is next week I'm going to bring another ball similar to that ball. But we're going to bring it here on the show to continue the guess. If someone can get 4 of the 8, Spin got very, very close. He took a lot of guesses though. 4 out of 8. If you can come close to that, I'm going to send a ball out. I'm really feeling like sending a ball out to kind of appreciate you guys tuning into the show for drought era signature. We're going to call it the drought era signatures here on the Going Deep podcast. And also, if anyone would be interested, we have the ability here to do some live rips. So at the end of a show, maybe we'll do a live card rip, see if we can catch a bill, see if we can catch a card signature. If that's interesting to anybody, tweet and or tell us. Let us know if that's interesting, because at the end of the show, I wouldn't mind, especially in the off season. Like, come the season, we're going to have pregame shows to do, kind of talk about the upcoming games. But I do have some good boxes, some blaster boxes, some boxes right here. That we'd be more than willing to rip live on the Going Deep podcast. So if anyone's interested in that, we'll do it, because why not? Like, see if we can catch any signed Bills memorabilia, jersey patches, any kind of cool kaboom cards. See if we can catch a Josh Allen rookie or something in there. So I do have a prestige blaster box, and I got an absolute to try to chase a kaboom before the new year cards come out. So if anybody's interested in that, definitely let us know, as it is the off season. Mike, what kind of topics we thinking about going forward? What are we thinking about for June?
So for June, let me actually pull this up on my notepad here for a second. So there's two topics I'm really interested in discussing going forward. The first one is in a couple of weeks, talking about what I just mentioned about 10 minutes ago. I want to go over the narrative busters, talk about the biggest offseason narratives that you're hearing in Buffalo and across the NFL, and basically kind of discussing, do you agree or do you think it's overhyped? Just for example, some of the topics in the future that we'll talk about. Tua, is he going to have a breakout third year? Obviously, we talked about Zach Wilson. Are the Patriots done? There's been a lot of talk about the Chargers and the Broncos. Are they the dangerous threats everyone says they are? Are the Bengals really a top-tier team, or are they going to come back down to earth next season in the AFC North once that division has a healthy Lamar Jackson and Baltimore Ravens team? And then a couple NFC things. You're seeing a lot of hype around New Orleans being a Super Bowl contender with Jameis Winston now. Don't really get where that's coming from, but is that legitimate? And then Brian Daboll and the Giants. Are you going to see a giant leap? Pun intended right there. And then another topic that we have in the upcoming weeks is going to be the keys to unlocking the Bills' future with the current and the long term down the road, where we're going to name 3 players on offense and defense that are going to be crucial to the Bills' present to winning a Super Bowl and their long term. So just a couple different ideas, and hopefully get a lot of you guys chiming in on those topics.
Nice. Looking forward to all those new shows coming out this year, coming out in the summer to bring you guys action. Going to have another drought era football. I'm going to put it up. I'm going to swap these out. So I have another drought era football to put up there to talk about at the end of the show. We're going to talk about maybe, Mike, maybe we'll have some time for a live rip, right? See if we can catch a bill. See if we can catch something.
Hey,
good.
Why not?
Why not put 5 minutes into an absolute or prestige box here that I have? Maybe we'll send some cards. Definitely send some cards out to some listeners. Definitely going to do that. We're going to play that game actually next week, Mike. I want to play the guess who we're going to pull. If you get it right, I'll send you the card.
Hey, this is the summertime. This is the time to play these games, have some fun, interact with everybody, and give some things away. Because believe me, we're hitting that time of the year where it is hard to come up with topics on a weekly basis. It's going to get back to normal once we get to training camp. But boy, it's this is the time of the year where if you can have fun, let's try to have fun.
Yeah, I got some good stuff over there, guys. So we'll see what we can do. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Smash the like button. We're gonna bring some giveaways. Why not bring some good into to the world right now, especially here for us in the USA. So really appreciate it. Everybody, please have a happy, healthy, safe Memorial Day. And anyone, please tweet us, comment on us if you'd like to see us do these giveaways in live rips. Because right now, this is the time to do it, June and July, before we get into some, we could beat the topics to death, like what Mcleod's going to do. And we have great shows on this network that's able to do that. But on the Going Deep podcast, we want to bring you some of that extra oomph. And I'm going to swap out that ball. We're going to do a live rip next week on a blaster box. You guys tell me who you think is going to be in that box, and maybe we'll send some cards out going that way as well. I'm a fun collector. I'm not like overly serious. I just have a bunch of stuff I buy when I see it because it's so rare now. So do want to do that stuff, but really appreciate everybody tuning in. Smash the like button. Have an intro video. Still, we're working on it. We're going to bring that to you soon as well. But as always, let's make Friday a great day to talk football. Who says it can't be? Who says you need to be at the bar when you can be right here talking about the Going Deep podcast and talking about Bills football? Especially, it's going to be a fun day, especially you guys are on the road, you're traveling, you're going to away games. I'm living vicariously through you. But for me, this is the Going Deep podcast. Kevin Massare, Mike Bundt, and we will catch you guys next Friday at our normal 8 o'clock time slot.